Hey, this is Videobob, and this is Knight Rider. Well, here it is. This is our 7th Knight Rider car that we built here at Bob's Prop Shop in the last 10 years. We're most famous for doing the DeLorean time machine. We've done 31 of those. We've done about half a dozen Bluesmobiles, a couple of A-Team vans, some Jurassic Park cars. We do a little bit of everything, but our Knight Riders are some of the best in the world, and that's just because we take the extra time to do all the little things that a lot of people skip over. This is a 1983 Pontiac Trans Am. This car is actually a 5-speed manual stick, which isn't what they used in the show and not normally used for a Knight Rider, but that's what we used for this car. This car started off as a regular SE Firebird and had aftermarket T-tops put in. The T-tops were an aftermarket project by, I think they're called Cars and Concepts and Cars and Concepts, something like that. They went out of business a long time ago, but they weren't the factory, and that was quite a challenge. We did manage to get the rubber for the T-tops, but the headliner doesn't exist. You have to make that from scratch. So every single thing in this car had to be completely replaced. All of the interior, the bucket seats were recovered, new carpet, all of the plastics, the door cards, everything along the doors, all of that stuff was replaced. And of course, if you're a subscriber to my channel, you saw the saga of the paint job that went on this car. It's now on its 2nd paint job. The first place, that was a debacle. You've seen it in my other videos. We got it painted in a hurry so it would be ready for its new owners at the Celebrity Fan Fest in San Antonio, Texas. This nose, the front fiberglass piece, and the scanner is from Mark's Custom Kits in Florida. I know Mark, he's a great guy, and we had to modify the controller a little bit because it was overheating a lot and it was causing some of the rectifiers in there to desolder. So we modified the enclosure with a cooling fan to keep it cool. These are weird things that you have to do when you're building these cars, and you just have to get creative. The fog lights, as you see under here, we modified the original factory bumper, cutting out portions of it so that we could mount the fog lights in there. Now, when you put on the nose, you'll notice that you lose the ability to have the original factory blinkers here. So what we ended up having to do is modify these fog lights on the end, the yellow ones, with relays so that they would function as turn signals. So they operate as turn signals. Also, a huge problem with the Firebirds and the Trans Ams has always been these pop-up headlights. They have a motor relay system in them so that when it winds up, it hits a stop and it knows that it's up or it knows that it's down. The wiring harnesses in them are brittle. You always have to replace the relays. The motors have to be rebuilt. And we tried and tried and tried to get them to work with the factory, but just could not do it. So what we had to do was modify them with our own toggle switch and our own relay system in order to get them to work. So now they work, but they don't work with the factory light switch anymore. These are the crazy things that you have to do when you're thinking about doing a Knight Rider kit, because there's just so many modifications that you have to make to the car. First of all, just to restore a Pontiac Firebird. These cars are now, 35, 40 years old, and it's just so much work to get it to be a usable car that you could drive. But this is a good driving car. I've driven the car. We ended up having to do a bunch of stuff to the brakes too. Brake calipers had to be replaced. Brake lines had to be replaced. Also, the rear drums had to be rebuilt. Did a full tune-up on the car, plugs, wires, all that kind of stuff, cap rotor, all the stuff that makes it run. Now, this car actually has a rebuilt motor in it, and it's not totally factory. Air conditioning has been removed, and air conditioning really doesn't do you any good in this car because there are no vents in the dash, as you'll see. All right, I'm going to give you a detailed breakdown exactly how the interior works. Now we're inside, and we have the whole dash. Just for fun, I'm going to turn it off for just a second. So basically, the power button here turns the car on. You get the sequence that runs down the middle just like it did in the show, and it defaults to normal cruise. You can press this auto button and auto illuminates, or pursuit, and pursuit illuminates. Keep it normal for now. The tachometer and the speedometer actually work. Everything else is just for looks. You have these two screens here. Now the one on the far right is just a rear backup camera that's coming out of the back bumper, and it's always on. Then over here we have a video that plays that's something that I edited together, and it's actually clips from the NBC television show with the sound effects that have been edited together in about a 40-minute video. And what I did was I edited it in such a way that KITT's voice comes out of the left speaker and activates this voice box, and then the sound effects come out of the right speaker. There's just a little stereo down here with an MP4 player that runs off an SD card, and it has a video output. So if I start the video over and go back to the very beginning, it'll go back and play the file again. And we'll turn it up all the way. And then you'll see KITT's voice box talk here.
I am the Knight Industries 2000. My serial number is Alpha Delta 227529.
This way it's kind of working in stereo. You have KITT speaking over here, sound effects over here near the computer, and it all makes sense. So it gives the viewer an experience.
I am the voice of Knight Industry 2000's microprocessor, K.I.T.T. for easy reference.
One of the things I did was I coincided his voice with the things that are actually happening on the screen. So he might talk about, you know, scanning a building, and then he'll speak about it, and the things are actually happening in real time. This upper console is sort of our own creative thing here. We put this surveillance mode scanner here, which doesn't normally go there, but it's just something that we put in. We wanted to make it kind of interactive so that you could turn switches and things would open.
Under normal circumstances, I would have introduced myself first, but I'm afraid these aren't exactly normal circumstances.
I understand, KITT, thank you. You're interrupting me, please. So, you know, these buttons, you can press them and they light up, but they don't actually turbo boost or do anything. If you really wanted to, you could hook these things up to relays and have them do certain things. And then the lower console, it doesn't do anything. There's just lighted buttons. But all of this sound effects gets really annoying after a while. I'm going to turn this down. The car runs really well. Let's see. Now you have to put the clutch in all the way. Rumble. It's got to warm up. It's cold. Yeah, so anyway, it runs. We replaced everything on the doors. The door cards, all of the plastics, the armrests, everything. The power windows work, all of this rubber, all of this has to be replaced if you want the car to work the way you want it to. So I want to demonstrate to you how we're operating the scanner. Inside this console here, you have the controller that operates the scanner, and then you have this little amplifier with an MP3 player that is running the speaker and plays this sound file. It's easy to get to, and this is how it works. You can, you know, adjust the speed of the scanner here, and it's pretty simple, and there's still room to put some things in there. Here's another little modification we put in here. We added a trunk popper button right here. You press this button and it opens the trunk. Once you've popped the trunk button, you can now open up the hatch. And hidden under this compartment is how we power the car. So what we've done is you lift up this hatch, and inside here you will find all of the power. In this little compartment here, you have hidden inside, just to pry that open, this is a 20 amp charger. This thing charges not only the battery that runs all the props, but the car battery. The two are completely separate. The battery that runs the car, the ignition, the engine, is not connected to any of these props in any way, not even the car radio. All of that runs from this battery back here. The reason that's important is because when you have the car on display and you have the dash on, you don't want to have the key on and in order to use the dash and the scanner and all those things. That's a huge mistake that a lot of builders make. Plus, when you're at a car show and it's on display, all this stuff would run down your car battery rather quickly, and then you're going to need to jump start your car because the battery's going to be dead. So we put a completely separate battery system back here, including this emergency battery cutoff, which will kill the entire system completely. One of the other important things that you have to do when you're building one of these cars is you have to separate all the electronics. So all of the power has been routed under here and runs up underneath this dash, and there is a completely separate fuse block system that runs all of these systems. It has nothing to do with the car itself. The car remains completely stock in all systems. Its electrical system, its fuel system, brake system, everything about the Trans Am stays completely stock. We put in all of our electrical systems with its own fuse, its own cutoff, its own battery, and its own charging system. That way the two are separated. You can take this car to any mechanic that works on GM vehicles and have it worked on, and nothing that has to do with any of this Knight Rider stuff will have any effect on the Trans Am itself. Let's talk about these crazy wheels. Now, these are the original factory Trans Am turbo cast bowling ball wheels. You have to take these and have them sandblasted and then powder coated or painted in order to get the finish to come back and look fairly decent. These are not reproductions. These are original factory hubcaps, which were plastic with a metal outer covering. They have a tendency to fall off. There's not a lot holding them on. The plastic gets brittle. You hit a hard pothole or something, they go flying. Most people took the original wheels off and put on some American racing wheels or some Kragers or some center lines, which always look good. I always thought those solid center lines looked so great on a Trans Am back in the 80s. Anyway, in order to keep the hubcaps on, what you have to do is you have to take the wheel off, you have to zip tie, you have to drill holes in the back of the mounts and zip tie them onto the wheels. I know that sounds pretty ghetto, but it's the only way to get it to work, to keep them from coming off. Fortunately, you can still get your socket through the hole and get to the lug nuts to take the wheel off. That was a smart thing they did. At least you could do that. But if you don't zip tie on your hubcaps, they're going to come off. So even if you have a traditional Trans Am with these hubcaps, zip tie your hubcaps on. Otherwise, your wheel covers are going to go flying and you're never going to see them again, and they're going to get destroyed. So these are on there nice and tight. All right, now before all the haters and the trolls start making all of their dumb comments, I'm going to address a couple of things here. Knight Rider fans love to argue over what is screen accurate and what is correct. Well, over all the seasons, what was there, 6 seasons of Knight Rider, the car changed not only season to season, but episode to episode. A lot of times they would show close-ups of a special type of a device, like an oxygen vent or a blood analyzer or some other thing. They would never even show where that was in the car. They would just show a close-up of it. And then a lot of times, you know, they would have a studio car that was sitting inside the studio, and they had a dash that was in the studio, and then they would have the stunt car with a round steering wheel and a guy wearing a wig trying to be David Hasselhoff. The car changed constantly. So there really is no such thing as a screen-accurate kit. There might be a scene-specific kit that you're trying to recreate, but I understand that I have a different upper console, lower console, pod, steering wheel, dash from all the different seasons. We just picked some of the stuff that we thought was some of the fan favorites. And I understand that this upper console is not screen-accurate, doesn't have the correct little reader in there, and doesn't have this and doesn't have that. We just put it together as our own interpretation so that it would fit and work for our client and their needs so that they could enjoy it and it would be fun for the fans. So please, before you start commenting, this isn't the right, this is not the right button that goes there, and then season 3, episode 4, this is not the button. I don't care, right? So haters, trolls will be blocked and banned immediately. We're not interested. The bottom line is, the Knight Rider fan community has been around for a long, long time, and for over 30 years, people have been building their own Knight Rider replicas. And I've seen some really bad ones, dashes made out of cardboard with 9-volt operated lights in them, and then I've seen some that are amazing where you can actually talk to the car and it would do things for you. So this car was designed to be a car show car that's going to be on a permanent display basis. And it was designed so that people can visit the car, see it, and we wanted the things inside to give a cool representation of what Knight Rider is and the feeling and the fun that is this show. So before you start whining and complaining about which specific season nose went with this specific season console, don't care. I will say though, if you want to build your own Knight Rider car, there's a couple of things you really want to try to get right. Number one is the turbo bulge hood. You definitely want to have that on the car. From 82 to 84, they had these little side vents that are seen at the bottom of the fenders. You'd like to have those. There's also some little covers that go down here on the front fenders. And then on the back, behind the doors, there's some other plastic covers. You want to have those. You want to try to have the correct wheels. The TurboCast came in both a 14-inch and a 15-inch. It doesn't really matter which size you have, but the 15s are preferred. They're just much more expensive. There's different versions of the nose. There's been so many copies of it made. There's tons of them. There's the longer nose, the shorter nose. There's some that actually have ground effects in them, some that have a grill in them, some that are cut away here and actually allow you to have the original turn signals. There's so many different versions of it. Later, Pontiac Firebirds would have Pontiac or something right here on the lid that's easy to fix. You know, there was different iterations of the hatch. You know, some of them had a windshield wiper. The original car from the film had no tinting on the glass, but that's very hard to find it without any of the tinting. There's just all these little things that you can look for, various different color versions, whether it's the doe skin or sandalwood or tan on the interior, the original PMD seats. I mean, the one that we did on our television show Screen Machine had Recaro seats that were done in vinyl. So, you know, you can do your Knight Rider car any way you want, or we can do it any way you want. But the thing is you're going to find so many different versions of the Knight Rider car floating around out there. And everyone likes to say they're an expert and they know it. I know what's right, and I know what's supposed to be in the car. But it is really hard to get consistency in the delivery of the parts. You know, there's so many different people making the electronics, the scanners, the noses, the dashes, the steering wheels, and no one company or person makes everything. And so many of the suppliers are very unreliable. You go to get the part and, you know, you'll be waiting 6 months, you still don't have your part, you send the guy your money. You know, there's a bunch of guys in Italy that are selling parts, and they're extremely unreliable. And I can't sit here and tell you who to trust and who not to trust. So all I can tell you is that what I do is it takes me a long time to gather up all the parts that we're going to need. I test them, I put them in a pile up on a shelf, and then when we have everything together, we use all the best of whatever we can get to build our car. So I know that our Knight Rider cars aren't screen accurate, and that it doesn't matter to me, because what matters to me is when the fans see it, they love it. The people who live in a basement, dressing up in a red turtleneck sweater, pretending to be David Hasselhoff, obsessing over every little button and switch, I'm not interested in. They're not my customers anyway. You might be wondering what a Knight Rider costs. Well, a Knight Rider can cost anywhere from about $50,000 to $75,000 or more, because after you do all the extensive restoration to what is essentially a piece of crap Trans Am, then turn it into Knight Rider, it's way more work than it looks. All the stuff that you have to do just for the custom wheels and hubcaps, the custom front end, the custom taillights, the interior, of course the dash, and all of the things it takes to get this car. We probably spent about 3 months straight working on this car, and it is finally finished, going to its new home. You'll be able to see this car at Celebrity Fan Fest in San Antonio and get your picture taken with the car. But we had a lot of fun building it. It's always a proud moment when it's finished. The thing looks fantastic. It drives great. It's a real car. The motor in this thing is tight and stout. It's almost impossible to drive it without peeling out. I cannot get from first to second without spinning the tires in this thing. The motor in this thing is pretty awesome. We're doing another Knight Rider car right now for another client that has an LS1 conversion, and we'll be covering that very soon. So if you're a fan of this kind of stuff, make sure that you subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications, because I do live videos all the time if you want to check them out. And when this car is available to be seen, I'll post it in the description links and you can go see it in person. Until then, hey, thanks for watching the channel. I'm Videobob. This is Knight Rider.